Hi, I'm Bob Gimlin. This video contains 3 short stories. Some people may call them folktales, fables, or parables. But the following are 3 that I've committed to memory for one reason or another. Of course, stories like this have countless variations and iterations, so I'll give my version of them. I've found these helpful. Maybe you will too. First, 2 rats. The milkmaid had recently received a promotion from cow milker to butter churner. There were more deserving maidens, but she knew how to work the politics of the fiefdom. Her new job was far more respectable, but indeed hard on the joints. Before she could finish churning her first batch of cream to butter, she had to take a break, and perhaps see if her friend the stable boy was around. 2 rats watched her go. They knew very well that when the maid walks away, butter is to be had. And with gleeful intent, they leapt into the barrel. But to their horror, their paws were not met with firm butter, but liquid milk. They weren't standing, they were swimming. Indeed, this was very not good. The first rat, well, he leapt frantically, but could not jump high enough without firm purchase beneath his feet. And the more he thrashed, the more he panicked, and the more he panicked, the more he thrashed, and he quickly hit exhaustion. He tried to drink it all up, but that only made matters worse. Weighed down by greed and exhausted by panic, he could not keep his head above the viscous milk. He drowned. The second rat, though, he was no fool. He had endured cats, raptors, and nightmare things. He refused to accept that a bucket of cream would end his story. There's always a way out for a smart rat, he thought. He treaded milk in an endless circle, conserving his energy while he thought of a solution. Over an hour passed, as indeed the milkmaiden found her stable boy. Suddenly, there was hope. The rat noticed that he was no longer paddling as much as he was wading. The viscous substance grew heavier, and in a matter of minutes, he seemed to be crawling more than wading. He considered trying to leap out, but a clever rat is also a patient rat. It wasn't much longer until the tasty mud beneath his feet could support his weight, and he could walk. He filled his mouth with butter, and he said a little rat prayer for his little rat friend. And with firm footing, he hopped from the butter to freedom. The cleverest of rats can tell you, don't panic. Don't give in to avarice or fear. Stay the course, and your situation may change sooner than you think. Number 2. The Guru. This one takes place somewhere in some time, though the story is placeless and timeless. 3 boys were down on their luck, and feeling quite glum. The first boy was just so uncertain about the direction technology was going. Factories required such specialization these days, and he had no training. Words could be printed in massive volume from all sorts of opinions and places, yet he could neither read nor write. And even if he had the platform to state his own opinion, he wasn't sure if he even had one. He felt irrelevant. The second boy, well, the rule of law was so overbearing on all facets of life. Walls and armies, tyrants, plagues, and famines, that's all he ever heard about. But apparently he was safe. Or so he was told. A bird is safe in a cage too, he thought. And the third boy, he was filled with the same existentialism that has plagued humanity since before the beginning. He was filled with overwhelming dread as he struggled to balance being a human with being part of humanity. So one day they endeavored to see the Guru, a gypsy who had taken residence on the outskirts of town. It was said that he had traveled from ocean to ocean, and that he offers answers to answerless questions. Legend had it that he celebrated his 100th birthday almost 50 years ago. The Guru was more than willing to help, as he always had been. He drew a map in the dirt with his thorny stick. He told the boys to climb the mountain as high as they can, and bring back one item from as far as they could go. And so the boys set out to the mountain, though rumors existed that the mountain was haunted by beasts and devils alike. The first boy, he only hiked for 2 days before he could go no more. When he was even younger, he was kicked by a horse that belonged to a powerful man. A man he was told is great. And his hip never fully healed. Usually only the cold hurt him, but the repetitive uphill motion took a great toll. and he could go no further, fearing he may sustain irreparable damage. He plucked a flower and headed back to the guru as instructed. 2 boys now continued hiking. The second boy, he suffered from what the monk at the church at least called asthma. He was always short of breath, but the allergens and thinning of the air at higher elevations took their toll. He wheezed even as he sat and decided he could go no further. He picked up a rock and began his trip down the mountain to return to the guru. The third boy continued all the way to the peak of the mountain. He walked and climbed until there was no more up to go. On that high peak, there was a large boulder which he could not lift. He saw tendrils of clouds that he couldn't reach, and the wind had swept every scrap of brush and every pebble away. Having nothing to bring back to the guru, the boy began his trek down the mountain, and he was just as dejected as his friends, if not more so. They reconvened at the old man's camp on the outside of town. The first boy explained that his legs could only take him 2 days up the mountain, and he found a flower there. He was embarrassed that his trip was the least, but the guru was kind and said, "Well then, my boy, the flower is what you get. It is beautiful, isn't it? Be happy with your flower." The second boy explained his breathing condition and said that after 3 days of hiking, he simply could not go any higher. The air was just too thin, but he managed to bring back a rock. The gypsy said, "Well, I think you did just fine. That is a unique rock. I promise you, there isn't a rock exactly like it in the whole world. Be happy with your rock." The third boy was upset. Even though he was the only one to reach the top, he felt like he had failed, just like he always did. So he explained that he made it all the way to the top, and he found a rock, but it was too big to take. There were no plants at all, and even though the clouds looked so close, they were too far to grasp. He brought nothing back with him. The guru inspected the boy's empty hands and said, "My young man, you have nothing. If you can be happy with nothing, then you've beat the game." Now addressing the whole group, he said, "What is better than a long journey with friends? You'd be surprised how many people never experience that." Number 3. Mad Lad. This one is about a boy who had an anger issue. Every time he had to do something he didn't want to do, or every time he couldn't do something that he wanted to do, he would lash out in some small but mean way. He would raise his voice or stomp his foot. He would speak ill of his lot in life, and he would talk out of turn. His mother was greatly upset about this indecent and disrespectful behavior. But the boy's father was not too bothered by it. His father was patient and wise enough to remember how he himself had been when he was young. One day, when the boy was throwing a fit, his father interrupted him and took him to the fence by the field. He said, "Son, I want to try and show you something. Every time you get angry, instead of acting out, try driving 1 nail into this fence. And by the time you have left the house, come to the fence and driven in the nail, you may feel calmer." Well, the boy liked hitting things with metal implements, so he wasn't about to complain. And as his father instructed, every time the boy became angry, instead of throwing a tantrum, he walked out to the fence and hammered a nail. It only took him 2 days until he had driven in 5 nails, but it took a whole week before he hammered in the next 5, and then 2 weeks for the next 5, until finally he hardly felt the need to get angry and therefore the need to hammer in any nails. His father had noticed a marked improvement. His father said, "I'm very proud of you, son. Now every time you feel like you would have become angry, but resist, I want you to pry a nail from the fence." The boy thought this seemed silly, but he trusted his father's wisdom. In fact, this instruction was the first nail he pried from the fence, because before the exercise began, this order would have upset him. And in about a week, he had pulled every nail from the fence. Again, the boy's father said, "I'm very proud of you, son, and I want to show you something. You are the fence. Every time you get angry, every time you lash out, you drive a nail deep inside of yourself, and it wounds you. And even when you remove the nail and remove the anger, it still leaves a scar. Anger makes you rough and discordant." The boy's father touched tiny holes barely visible over coats of paint, from when the father had done the same thing when he was just a boy. The man said, "Time will smooth and flatten the wounds, but they'll always be there. That's the thing about anger. We do it to ourselves, and even after we remove the anger, the damage has been done. It's not worth it. Don't hurt yourself. Act appropriately, not angrily." Frankly, this video didn't turn out exactly as I would have liked it to, but I felt compelled to try and do something. I don't know. I just see so much panic. So much unproductive anger. So much hopelessness. So this was just my attempt to maybe address that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, thanks an awful lot for listening.